Madam Vice President, Excellencies, today is not only Nowruz and the first day of spring, it is also the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. As I developed in my first report to the Human Rights Council last year, minority issues are linked to a specific form of discrimination that should be eliminated by the recognition of the need for differential solutions for persons in different situations. On the occasion of this International Day, I call on all states to fully recommit to fight racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and intolerance, including against minorities. The mandate bestowed upon me by the Human Rights Council requires me to promote the implementation of the Declaration on the Rights of Persons Belonging to Minority. In pursuit of this mission, my second report to the Human Rights Council proposes to explore in depth the meaning and the extent of the commitment undertaken by the UN member states through the first article of this declaration, which reads as follows, I quote, "States shall protect the existence and the national or ethnic, cultural, religious and linguistic identity of minorities within their respective territories and shall encourage conditions for the promotion of that identity." It is clear from this wording that minorities and their identities need to be protected by each state. However, as its title indicates, the declaration does not address the rights of minorities themselves, but the rights of persons belonging to minorities. This wording reflects a long-standing academic and political debate about the holders of human rights, or in other terms, whether human rights only exist as individual rights, even when they are exerted collectively, or whether some human rights may be recognized to groups. The debate is far from being new, and it is even far from being over. Through the thorough study on the rights to identity of persons belonging to minorities, I show how the respect for the individual right to identity of persons belonging to a minority group constitutes the substance of the right to identity recognized to minorities by Article 1 of the 1992 Declaration, thus bridging the individual and collective dimension of the right to identity of persons belonging to a minority. This may sound very theoretical and abstruse, but this is not. All over the world, persons belonging to minorities continue to face widespread discriminations in all areas of life, be it in school, in securing employment, in accessing public services, as well as through their representation in the media. For a brief moment, I want us to put ourselves in the shoes of some of the many persons belonging to minorities around the world who face such violations of rights due to denial of their identity. Can you imagine not being able to register your traditional name as your legal name? This traditional name has been present in your family for generations, and it is the name that your parents so thoughtfully gave to you at birth to bring honor to your ancestors. Can you imagine being forced to choose a religion that does not represent your true belief when you apply for an official identity card at a government office, only because the faith that you believe is not officially recognized by the state? And if you don't choose an officially recognized religion, you will not be issued an identity card. Can you imagine being barred from participating in your favorite sport at school as a teenager because you wear clothing that express your religious affiliation? These are just a few examples from the many cases that are regularly shared with me. Madam Vice President, Excellencies, what singularizes minorities among other vulnerable groups is precisely the collective identity as persons belonging to a minority. It is therefore not by chance or by accident that through this first article of the Declaration, states commit themselves to recognize and protect both the existence and the identity of minorities. Their identity is consubstantial to the existence of minorities. However, it is not for the state to define the identity of persons belonging to minorities. Minority identity results from the combined exercise of the specific right to identity by persons belonging to minority and the recognition and protection from the state of that identity. In other words, the minority's identity will be the outcome of a process of self-identification by persons belonging to minorities based on their relational identification both with the minority group and with society as a whole. Thus, the identity of a person belonging to a minority is not only relational, but also complex and multi-layered, as this person must be able to identify him or herself as both a person belonging to a minority and as a citizen of the state. This, in turn, implies that the national identity cannot be exclusive, as it has to leave room to accommodate the positive articulation of multi-layered identities of persons belonging to minorities. It is therefore critical for states to avoid adopting, or if need be, to abolish, any legislation or practice that limits the expression of the minority identity through individual identities of persons belonging to minority groups. Such legislation or practices are contrary to the commitment of the states under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and of course the Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities. States are committed to recognize as part of the identity of persons belonging to a minority the unconditional right to use their own language, the right to exert freely their religion and to express their religious affiliation, including through their appearance or the wearing of distinctive signs. The right to have identity documents which reflects who they really are includes the right to have their traditional names linked to their minority identity registered as their legal name, including, when relevant, with a patronym. Also the right in their identity documents not to be assigned a religion which does not correspond to their own belief, as well as the right to have their religion properly acknowledged and recognized when included in official documents. Similarly, when relevant for identification documents, those people have the right to choose which nationality or ethnicity they are officially assigned to, including multiple affiliation. States also need to acknowledge that persons belonging to a minority have the right to promote their minority identity through traditional practices, art and other cultural manifestations, including by preserving the environmental and patrimonial dimension, whether natural or urban, through which the minority identity is present in the public space. Further, states shall take no measure to impede the transmission of elements of minority identity from generation to generation. This implies that state authorities do not prevent the production and diffusion of information and knowledge about the role of a given minority in national history, so that on the one side, persons belonging to this minority group can understand and embrace their minority identity, and on the other, those not belonging to this minority group understand the minority identity and its contribution to society as a whole. This is a necessary condition for such identity to be acknowledged and respected. Madam Vice President, Excellencies, in the spirit of sharing good practices to improve the situation of minority worldwide, I would be keen on hearing from states and civil society organizations during this interactive dialogue examples of how countries have implemented the commitments made under Article 1 of the Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to minorities. However, before concluding, I need to point out a current lacuna in my reporting. During my first year as a mandate holder, I could not find any agreement for a country visit. I am very aware that this is a failure as regards the requirements of the mandate bestowed to me by this Council. Being based in Geneva, I have engaged throughout the year in fruitful conversation and constructive cooperation with many of your permanent missions. Following such positive engagement, I am pleased to have secured an official country visit for the first half of this year. I wish to continue my engagement with you all in this manner in order to agree on future country visits. Today, more than ever, the need to properly address the fate of minority populations, making certain that persons belonging to minorities are not systematically discriminated, or even worse, persecuted or killed, as we too often witness in too many countries, goes beyond a fundamental human rights issue. Dealing properly with minority issues is also a central concern for maintaining or building peaceful and thriving societies. This is actually both a domestic issue, then fully falling within the realm of the respect and implementation of human rights, but also much too often an international peace and security issue which deserves to be acknowledged and treated as such. In the current volatile and uncertain world we are living in this year 2025, I urge all of you present today to convey to your government this imperative necessity to respect, protect, and actively promote the place and role of persons belonging to minorities, allowing them, through their specific identity, to contribute to society as a whole. Thank you for your attention.